Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Who taught you how to procrastinate? Because I guarantee you weren't born putting things off. You were programmed, yes, you were conditioned, trained, brainwashed by a system that rewards average, celebrates mediocrity, and punishes urgency. And now you sit there talking about how you're just not feeling it today? Let me break it to you. You don't need to feel it. You need to be it. You were not born a procrastinator. That behavior didn't come from your DNA. It came from your environment, your influences, and the patterns you've allowed to run your life. From an early age, society begins to program us. Parents, teachers, media, even friends. They all start shaping your internal software. You're told to wait your turn, to be patient, to sit still, to not speak up until you're called on. You're rewarded for compliance, not creativity. You're praised for following the rules, not for taking initiative. And over time, that subtle programming takes root. It becomes your default. You stop trusting your instincts to act. You start second guessing, hesitating, delaying. Eventually, procrastination isn't something you do, it becomes who you believe you are. But let's be real, that belief is a lie. It's a false identity you adopted based on a faulty system. And the only reason it still has power over you is because you've been running the same outdated code in your mind. If your phone was glitching or running slow, you'd update the software. But how many of us are running life on a mental operating system that it hasn't been upgraded in years? The problem isn't that you lack motivation. The problem is your programming. You've been conditioned to wait for the perfect moment, to feel ready, to make sure every step is mapped out. You've been taught to fear mistakes, to avoid risk, to value comfort over growth. That's not your nature. That's your training. But here's the truth. You can deprogram what doesn't serve you. You can unlearn procrastination the same way you learned it, through repetition, through intentional thought, and through disciplined action. Most people don't even realize they've been programmed. They think they're making choices. They think it's their free will that's keeping them stuck. But it's not free will. It's a default pattern. And here's how you know. You make the same excuses, feel the same frustration, and get the same results. That's not coincidence. That's code running in the background, and unless you interrupt it, you'll keep living on autopilot. And autopilot is dangerous because it tricks you into thinking you're in control while time is slipping through your fingers. Every time you say, I'll do it tomorrow, what you're really doing is deferring your destiny. You're delaying the very thing you were created to do because your programming has convinced you that later is safer. But later is a lie. Later never comes. All you have is now, and the only way to break the cycle is to break the code. That starts by questioning the thoughts that keep you stagnant. Who told you that you weren't ready? Who told you that success takes forever? Who told you that failure is fatal? Those beliefs didn't come from your spirit, they came from your surroundings. And if you don't examine them, you'll keep executing on a script that wasn't even written by you. If you were raised in an environment where taking initiative was seen as risky, guess what? You'll avoid action. If you were raised where people constantly settled, you'll find comfort in mediocrity. But when you become aware that this is programming, not your identity, you regain your power. Because what was programmed can be reprogrammed. And the most powerful thing you can do is choose to install new beliefs that align with the person you're becoming, not the one you've been pretending to be. Words are not just sounds we make. They're tools that build or break us. The way you talk about yourself is the way you train your brain to believe. Every time you say, I'm just lazy, I always put things off, or I never follow through, you're not describing your behavior, you're cementing your identity. The brain doesn't distinguish between a joke and a declaration. It hears what you say and works overtime to make it true. That's why people stay stuck for years, not because they lack discipline, but because they've labeled themselves with limitation. When you call yourself a procrastinator, you give your mind permission to keep delaying. You justify it, you rationalize it, and eventually you create a belief system that supports inaction. What started as a pattern becomes a personality. And once something becomes part of your identity, you will fight to protect it, even if it's keeping you broke, tired, and stuck. But if you can talk yourself into procrastination, you can speak yourself out of it. The same words that bound you can be flipped to free you. Start telling yourself a different story. Instead of saying, I'm bad at finishing things, say, I'm becoming someone who always finishes strong. That may not feel true yet, but speak it anyway. Your words are not just reflections of your reality. They are blueprints for your future. When you consistently speak action, confidence, and discipline, you give your mind new instructions. You're not lying to yourself. You're leading yourself. You're guiding your thoughts in a direction that creates progress. Your subconscious mind listens to everything. It doesn't judge, it doesn't evaluate. It just receives and executes. So when you say things like, this is too hard, I can't focus, or I'll never be consistent, your subconscious doesn't argue, it obeys. It creates resistance. It lowers your energy. It takes your words and manifests matching emotions and behaviors. That's why negative self-talk is so dangerous. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You reinforce the very thing you're trying to overcome. You've got to flip the script. Speak as if you're already operating on a higher level. Speak as if you're already the person you're becoming. I'm focused. I take action immediately. I follow through. I execute under pressure. These aren't just affirmations. They're activations. They activate a new mental state. They pull you out of hesitation and push you into movement. And the more you say it, the more your brain starts to believe it. The more you believe it, the more you start acting like it. You've got to be careful with casual language. What you say out of habit eventually becomes what you believe out of conviction. That's why you can't afford to joke about being lazy or make a habit of minimizing your abilities. Every word is a seed. You are either planting a future of power or a future of limitation. Choose wisely, because those seeds grow, and what you say today becomes how you feel tomorrow, and eventually how you live. People love to speak facts. I've always struggled with this, they say. But facts are not final. Facts describe your past, your words define your future. So don't speak facts, speak faith. Speak what you're stepping into, not what you're stepping out of. Speak where you're going, not where you've been. Speak as if it's already done, because your words are the prophecy of your progress. Every time you say, I take action fast, even if you don't yet, your brain hears the message. Every time you say, I show up no matter what, your subconscious takes note. You are not simply affirming, you are aligning. You are aligning your words with the version of yourself that gets things done, that doesn't wait, that doesn't waver. Your environment is either fueling your greatness or feeding your excuses. The people you surround yourself with, the energy you allow in your space, the conversations you tolerate, these things are not neutral. They are either pushing you forward or pulling you backward. And most people don't even realize it. They think they're making decisions independently, but what they're really doing is reflecting the dominant influence in their environment. If you're constantly surrounded by people who move slow, think small, and settle for less, you will unconsciously adopt the same patterns, even if you want more for your life. You can't outperform your environment for long. You may have strong goals, big dreams, and powerful intentions, but if you're planted in the wrong soil, you will not grow the way you're supposed to. A seed is only as good as the ground it's in. The right seed in toxic soil will still struggle. Your focus, your mindset, your drive, these things are affected by what's around you. If you're in a space where complaining is normal, where discipline is rare, where vision is mocked, you'll slowly lower your standards to match the room, not because you're weak, but because you're human. We are creatures of influence. We become like the people we talk to the most. Their mindset becomes our mindset. Their fears become our fears. Their habits become our habits. That's why it's dangerous to hang around people who are okay with being average, people who celebrate comfort, avoid accountability, and justify procrastination. It's not that they're bad people, it's that their presence is costing you progress. You can't keep borrowing beliefs from people who've stopped believing in themselves. You can't take advice from people who aren't even walking in the direction you're headed. You need to build an environment that holds you to a higher standard, an environment that challenges your excuses, sharpens your thinking, and stretches your potential. You need people who speak vision, not just venting. People who execute, not just entertain. People who inspire you to raise your energy, elevate your habits, and take action even when it's inconvenient. That kind of environment doesn't just support success, it demands it. It pulls more out of you because it won't let you hide behind comfort. Sometimes the biggest breakthrough doesn't come from learning something new, it comes from leaving something familiar. Leaving the conversations that drain you, leaving the routines that waste your time, leaving the relationships that feed your procrastination. It's not easy, but it's necessary. You can't sit in a room full of passive people and expect to build an active life. You can't keep investing your time where there's no return. Your environment should be an asset, not a liability. It's not just about the people either. Look at your physical space. Is it cluttered or clear? Is it a place of focus or distraction? Does it encourage movement or invite laziness? Your surroundings have a voice and they speak to your subconscious every day. If your space tells your brain, relax, scroll, wait, then don't be surprised when you procrastinate. But if your space tells your brain, work, move, finish, you'll feel that energy shift. Environment matters more than motivation because motivation fades. But the right environment keeps you aligned even when the feeling disappears. The fastest way to upgrade your habits is to upgrade your environment. Change the room, change the routine, change the rhythm. Create a space where action is normal and excellence is expected. Get around people who don't tolerate your excuses because they see your potential. Let their pace challenge your passivity. Let their discipline expose your distractions. Let their momentum become your new standard. Because when your environment expects more from you, eventually you will expect more from yourself. Most people are waiting for clarity before they take action. They want the entire path laid out. They want to be sure, to feel confident, to have every step mapped with precision before they move. But the truth is, clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. You don't get direction by standing still, you get direction by stepping forward. You don't find momentum sitting in your head, analyzing all the angles. You find it the moment your feet start moving, even when the path ahead is foggy. Waiting for clarity is often just fear in disguise. It feels safe to delay when you tell yourself you're being wise or careful, but deep down, what you're really doing is avoiding discomfort, avoiding the possibility of making the wrong move, avoiding failure, avoiding judgment. But the longer you wait, the more resistance you build, the more time you give fear to settle in and plant deeper roots. And the deeper it gets, the harder it is to move at all. That's how people get stuck for years, not because they don't know what to do, but because they refuse to move until it's perfect. Perfection is a trap. You don't need the full picture to begin. You just need the first step. That one move, that simple action unlocks feedback, insight, and experience. Things you can't get from theory or planning. Action teaches you faster than any book, any mentor, or any strategy session. You won't know if it's the right direction until you take the step. And even if it's the wrong step, at least now you know you can course correct, you can pivot, you can adjust. But none of that happens until you move. Clarity is a reward for action, not a prerequisite for it. The people who move fast in life, the ones who build momentum, aren't always the smartest or most prepared. They're just the ones who stopped waiting. They figured out that action produces progress, and progress produces clarity. Every step you take creates a new perspective. From that new angle, you can see what you couldn't before, and from that place, you make the next move. That's how momentum works. It's built one imperfect action at a time. Thinking can only take you so far. There comes a point where more thinking becomes a form of procrastination. You call it planning, but you're really stalling. You say you're being strategic, but deep down, you're just scared. And that fear grows stronger the longer you stay inactive. You start to doubt your abilities, your ideas, your value. You replay scenarios in your mind that haven't even happened yet. You overestimate the risk and underestimate your capacity, and all of that mental noise clouds your clarity. But the moment you take action, something shifts. You prove to yourself that you're not a prisoner of procrastination. You remind your mind that it doesn't run the show, you do. And with every small move, you reclaim your confidence. You start trusting yourself again. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to find them through action. Because action isn't just what gets results, it's what builds identity. Every time you move without all the information, you become the kind of person who doesn't need permission to progress. People often think they lack direction, when what they really lack is courage. They don't need another roadmap, they need to move their feet. They don't need more information, they need activation. It's not about waiting until the fear goes away, it's about moving while it's still there. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move in spite of it. And the moment you move, you begin to build the very clarity you thought you were missing. Most people are waiting for clarity before they take action. They want the entire path laid out. They want to be sure, to feel confident, to have every step mapped with precision before they move. But the truth is, clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. You don't get direction by standing still. You get direction by stepping forward. You don't find momentum sitting in your head analyzing all the angles. You find it the moment your feet start moving, even when the path ahead is foggy. Waiting for clarity is often just fear in disguise. It feels safe to delay when you tell yourself you're being wise or careful, but deep down, what you're really doing is avoiding discomfort, avoiding the possibility of making the wrong move, avoiding failure, avoiding judgment. But the longer you wait, the more resistance you build, the more time you give fear to settle in and plant deeper roots. And the deeper it gets, the harder it is to move at all. That's how people get stuck for years, not because they don't know what to do, but because they refuse to move until it's perfect. Perfection is a trap. You don't need the full picture to begin, you just need the first step. That one move, that simple action unlocks feedback, insight, and experience. Things you can't get from theory or planning. Action teaches you faster than any book, any mentor, or any strategy session. You won't know if it's the right direction until you take the step. And even if it's the wrong step, at least now you know you can course correct, you can pivot, you can adjust. But none of that happens until you move. Clarity is a reward for action, not a prerequisite for it. The people who move fast in life, the ones who build momentum, aren't always the smartest or most prepared. They're just the ones who stopped waiting. They figured out that action produces progress, and progress produces clarity. Every step you take creates a new perspective. From that new angle, you can see what you couldn't before. And from that place, you make the next move. That's how momentum works. It's built one imperfect action at a time. Thinking can only take you so far. There comes a point where more thinking becomes a form of procrastination. You call it planning, but you're really stalling. You say you're being strategic, but deep down, you're just scared. And that fear grows stronger the longer you stay inactive. You start to doubt your abilities, your ideas, your value. You replay scenarios in your mind that haven't even happened yet. You overestimate the risk and underestimate your capacity. And all that mental noise clouds your clarity. But the moment you take action, something shifts. You prove to yourself that you're not a prisoner of procrastination. You remind your mind that it doesn't run the show, you do. And with every small move, you reclaim your confidence. You start trusting yourself again. Not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to find them through action. Because action isn't just what gets results, it's what builds identity. Every time you move without all the information, you become the kind of person who doesn't need permission to progress. People often think they lack direction when what they really lack is courage. They don't need another roadmap, they need to move their feet. They don't need more information, they need activation. It's not about waiting until the fear goes away, it's about moving while it's still there. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to move in spite of it. And the moment you move, you begin to build the very clarity you thought you were missing. You were not created to live in delay. You were not designed to hesitate, to question your worth, or to wait for someone else to give you permission to move. You were created with dominion. That means authority, power, and the divine ability to act. But somewhere along the way, that truth was buried under self-doubt, comparison, fear, and the noise of a world that constantly tells you to play it safe, to stay small, and to wait for the perfect moment. The problem is, When you forget that you were built for dominion, you start living in delay. You start negotiating with your potential. You start entertaining the idea that maybe later is better than now. But later is not a gift, it's a trap. It's a comfortable excuse disguised as strategy. When you were given dominion, you were given the power to move with confidence, to speak with purpose, and to create outcomes through intention and action. That power still lives inside you, even if it's been dormant. But every time you put things off, every time you second guess yourself, every time you tell yourself not yet, you're handing over your authority to hesitation. You're allowing circumstances, feelings, and fear to lead your decisions instead of your purpose. Dominion doesn't wait for validation. It doesn't wait for motivation. It doesn't even wait for clarity. Dominion acts, it speaks, it builds, it shows up when it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't ask, do I feel ready? It declares, I am ready because I was made ready. That's the mindset that moves things. That's the mindset that produces change. Not because everything is perfect, but because the person moving understands their identity. And identity is what drives action. When you remember who you are, you stop negotiating with delay. Procrastination is not just a bad habit. It's rebellion against your design. You were wired to take action, to dominate time, not be dominated by it. Every hour you waste in indecision is an hour stolen from your calling. Every task you delay is momentum sacrificed on the altar of comfort. And comfort, while it feels good in the moment, never produces greatness. You weren't created to coast, you were created to conquer. But you can't conquer anything if you're always pausing, waiting, and hesitating. People who walk in dominion don't always feel fearless, they just refuse to let fear make decisions. They may feel the weight of resistance, but they lean in anyway. They understand that feelings are not instructions. Emotions are real, but they're not always reliable. Dominion says, I move regardless. I act with authority. I lead my time. I don't follow it. That shift in mindset is what separates those who produce results from those who simply dream about them. You are not subject to the limitations around you. You were not born to be reactive. You were born to be proactive, to create, initiate, and move things forward. Dominion is not just about confidence, it's about responsibility. You've been entrusted with gifts, ideas, opportunities, and time. And the more you delay, the more those gifts sit unused. You don't need more time, you need more action in the time you already have. That's how you step into dominion. That's how you honor what you've been given. There's a lie that says you'll be ready when it feels right. But readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. It's a stance. It's a recognition that your power is not based on circumstances lining up. It's based on the truth that you were created to lead, not follow. That truth doesn't expire, that power doesn't fade, but it does require a response. It requires a posture that says, I won't wait, I won't shrink, I won't delay what I've been called to do. Because the longer you wait to walk in dominion, the longer you live beneath your true capacity. Your destiny doesn't respond to good intentions. It doesn't move because you plan to move. It doesn't shift because you felt inspired one day and wrote some goals in a notebook. Destiny responds to action, not dreams, not desires, not declarations, action. The world is full of people with potential, full of people with great ideas and meaningful intentions. But potential without action is just wasted energy. Intention without execution is just noise. Nothing changes until you move. You can speak about what you want all day long. You can visualize it, journal about it, create the perfect routine, and listen to every motivational video on the internet. But if you don't take consistent action, your destiny will remain a theory instead of a reality. Because destiny doesn't meet you in your daydreams, it meets you in your discipline. It doesn't respond to who you could be, it responds to who you choose to be every single day through your habits, your focus, and your movement. The mistake many people make is believing that passion alone is enough. They feel excited about the vision, so they assume it's already theirs. But passion without persistence fades fast. And when the emotions wear off, most people stop. They go back to waiting for another wave of motivation before they take the next step. But destiny isn't built in waves. It's built in inches, in quiet hours, in showing up when nobody's clapping. It's built in the unseen moments when you choose to act anyway, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when nobody else understands what you're building. People love to talk about potential. They say you've got so much in you, but potential is cheap. It only becomes valuable when it's activated. The difference between someone who wins and someone who waits is not talent, it's execution. It's the decision to take imperfect action instead of chasing perfect timing. Because the truth is, perfect timing is a myth. There's no magical alignment of circumstances where everything feels right. You create right moments by moving, not by waiting. Every goal you have, every dream in your heart requires a version of you that shows up differently. And you don't become that version by thinking about it. You become it by training your body, your mind, and your decisions to act according to the future, not your feelings. Action is what closes the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. Every time you do the thing you've been putting off, every time you take the next step, you shrink that gap. You signal to your mind that you're serious. You build proof, and proof creates belief far faster than positive thinking ever will. Most people think they need belief before they act, but it's actually the opposite. You need action before you believe. Action builds confidence. Action builds clarity. Action creates traction. And once you see even a small result, even a tiny win, that momentum begins to multiply. You stop needing to hype yourself up because your results start speaking for you. But none of that happens if you stay in the land of intention. You don't become disciplined by reading about discipline. You become disciplined by doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it. You don't become successful by writing out your 5-year plan over and over again. You become successful by doing what you said you would do one day at a time, no matter what. Destiny is not interested in your excuses, your delays, or your story. It's waiting on your consistency. It's waiting on your obedience to the work. It's waiting on the moment you stop preparing to live and start living.